we we keep talking about this term, right? We have to accept. What does that mean? Just go with the flow. What does it mean by going with the flow? Going with the flow sounds more like a concept, yeah. Acceptance also sometimes sounds more like a concept than to be able to put it into practice. Accepting the reality and moving on. What is reality comprised of? So interesting question, yeah. What is reality? Because our Vedic scripture says there's no reality, everything is illusion, it's maya, right? It's a projection of the mind. So what is reality? Okay, so I'm gonna tuning your mind to what? Mm, somebody says agree to the situation and things happening. Agree in what way? What do we do to agree? Tuning your mind to reality. Again, reality is very different for different. It is the projection. We we perceive reality, you know that. So for example, our retina has very it doesn't have color pigmentation, right? But something happens in the brain and then we perceive colors. So what is reality? It is the projection of the mind and the brain, right? Agreeing for the decision that mutually understood. Okay. Okay, so here's a little thing that I'm proposing, and see if it fits into your world. Acceptance is making peace with unfulfilled expectations and unmet needs. I'm repeating. Acceptance is making peace with unfulfilled expectations and unmet needs. That is when we will be able to go with the flow. Yes or no? For example, last month, in the month of March, I had a full calendar for March and April. So I had already started, making this lovely, building these castles in the air about, oh, I'm going to earn good amount of money and I will do this, and I've planned my purchases and all that. And until 8th of March, everything was all right. 9th March onwards, news started trickling in that all my trainings have been cancelled and I have no booking for the next 2 months now. Okay, now how do you go with the flow? There are huge expectations, financial, there's a concern of survival, there's a concern of meeting my monthly expenses. How do you now deal with this? How do you come to a level of acceptance? Or, for example, sometimes there could be bigger events in our life, failure at a job, not meeting our targets where we expected promotion to happen, or we did amazingly well and yet we were not promoted. Something happened with our children or spouses. So many things can happen where we have a certain level of expectation and certain needs that we're trying to meet. When they are not met, suddenly pain comes to us, disappointment comes to us, anxiety comes to us. And yesterday we talked about the principle of impermanence. First, understanding that everything is going to be transient, and the next is life is not turning out the way I want. Am I able to make peace with that? And therefore the practice of mindfulness, for example, where does this unmet needs or unfulfilled expectations have an impact? They have an impact on our thoughts and emotions, because the thoughts will keep running to something that is being unfulfilled. And therefore the practice of mindfulness, where we consciously just pay attention without indulging into our thoughts and emotions, can help us to come to a certain level of slowing down of this inner chaos because of the unmet expectations and needs. And once we are able to handle this internal chaos, probably then the next step is coming to a certain level of peace. So we said, okay, so now everything is cancelled. What do we do? Do we keep on crying during the lockdown? or do certain things. And then we started doing certain things, and it's so interesting. In the past 15 days, friends, I have reached out to 1,500 people, introducing mindfulness to them. I haven't earned a penny, but that's all right. I mean, money will come, or if it doesn't come, then acceptance about that also. But rather than just sitting and brooding over my future and getting worried and anxious about it, it's a brilliant thing to reach out to 1,500 people. And that then feeds you with joy, happiness, the sense of contribution, and probably more enthusiasm to look forward to the next day. I have been under lockdown since 14th of April because everything got cancelled. I was at home. But I have loved this phase because unmet expectations were embraced. And that is why the practice of mindfulness, do not, when we do our mindfulness practice, do not judge any experience. Try and remain in the non-judgmental phase. That raises our ability to accept the pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, and not get drawn into it. Okay, cool. So let's invite some final comments before we close. Sometimes we have to accept unwillingly, as it may not be in our hands. See, this willingness, unwillingness, so many things are not in our hands. And when we say I am accepting unwillingly, this will bring suffering again. So because you say I accepted unwillingly, I wasn't willing, I wasn't willing, it is against my wish. Again, this is again in a way also judgment, no? So it will create suffering, it will create a lot of suffering, it will create a lot of friction. And this is again, this current crisis tells us, friends, that life will never unfold the way we want. Sometimes it will surprise us to our wits, and we'll go crazy that how is this unfolding, in spite of making all the best effort that we can. So sometimes people will then, because it is not unfolding in the way they like it, they will indulge into external activities, start drinking, start eating, start seeking more entertainment, become frustrated. And why? Simply because it is not unfolding the way they want it. But imagine if we are able to build this level of acceptance, to be able to make peace with unmet expectations and unfulfilled needs, then it will also feed us with a lot of energy to keep working at what we want to achieve, chasing our dreams and all that. So therefore, I think it's very, very important. And sometimes such situations will not fulfill our expectations and needs. Sometimes people will not do that. Our closest people also may not be able to do that. We also have to come to that level of acceptance. Of course, it's painful, we will suffer. So in our last series, we talked about when suffering comes, there is an art of suffering. We must be able to suffer, also go through the suffering. Okay, good. All right, so let's have some final comments and then we will close.